Mike Heyman's calling in from Great Beach, Florida.
You want to hear? We just got some sad news. You want to?
Yeah, Mike, we've got some sad news to report to you. A guy that
Mr. Hicks.
Yeah, and of course Larry Hicks, good friend of mine, and
the game warden. I read that on Facebook.
And he has died of cancer, and he had fought cancer for years and years, and one of the most courageous people I know, and one of the most gallant people, if you can use that as a wording for a person. He's the guy that saved, that miraculously saved Jack Rouse's life. And Rice, you know a lot about that.
Well, I wrote one of my more memorable stories. I've written thousands of stories, and but in the top of the ones I remember is the story of how Mr. Hicks saved Jack Rouse's life. This was maybe 15, 20 years ago.
That's right.
Jack Rouse came to Troy to fly with Mr. Sanders and Kenny Campbell, and he was a big aviation buff. I believe he was flying some experimental airplane from the Troy airport. This was during the week when the Talladega race was going on. They were practicing for Talladega. Well, the plane crashed into the pond right there at Palos Verdes Estates in the backyard of Mr. Hicks. He happened to be there. I think he was recovering from cancer at that time.
Yeah, he was just sitting in the den, yeah.
He's a former Marine, if I believe, and he had training on air, water rescues. Well, he gets in his little brim fishing boat, goes out there to the airplane that's underwater. Mr. Rouse is stuck in the pilot seat, probably underwater for several minutes.
Upside down
in the gas. The gas has leaked out all over him. Somehow, it takes him, I think, 2 tries, and he goes in there, pulls him up, gets him back to the shore, and by that time, authorities had come and rushed him out to the hospital. So he saved, amazingly, Mr. Rouse survives.
He's one of the biggest names in NASCAR.
Right. He owns about 5 teams of NASCAR.
And he's probably close to a billionaire.
Yeah. And the rest of the story is that Mr. Hicks and Mr. Rouse became super close friends, and he said he was always going to races as Mr. Rouse's guest and his family. And but one of the more memorable stories in Troy history, really, is that was a big national.
Well, of course,
story.
He was an ex-Marine, decorated Marine. Of course,
and
he was a game warden, and I knew he and his wife very well, and of course he fought this brain cancer for a long time, and very courageously. And we lost not only a decorated Marine, but an outstanding individual. And our prayers and our thoughts go out to he and his family. And of course, you wrote an article about him, and you learned a lot about him.
Well, he was very gracious and kind, and it was just providence that he happened to be there, because it's not even just being there wasn't enough. You had to have the courage and strength and knowledge to know what to do once you got to a situation like that, and not panic. And but I remember that story was national news. USA Today had a big story about it, and locally he let me tell the story. It was a long story of what happened, so you can see why it's one of all the stories I've written, that's one that stands out.
No question about it. And Mike, does it ring a bell to you a little bit?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember that story. Everybody remembers that story.
I know.
Brian Meadows lived out there for years and was living out there when that happened. I mean, everybody remembers that one.
But it also rings a bell a little bit with something that happened to you too. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, but I mean, I wasn't in an airplane when I crashed. I mean, being in an airplane, crashed in a small little pond like that in Troy's,
You know what? If he's not trained,
and being the national, somebody that knows, everybody knows Rouse from all over the world.
Yeah, and another thing about it, if he's not there, and it's just the average Joe. Rouse drowns in that crash and does not live to to
do all the things he did.
To drive another car or.
I'm almost positive Rouse was in another plane crash not too long ago.
Oh, really? Well, of course, Rouse is very well known, one of the biggest names in NASCAR.
I used to follow him because of that, and he just had great drivers and teams, and I don't know if he won a lot of championships, but his drivers were always winning races, and I think he was the biggest owner because he had about 4 or 5 drivers. Yeah. Still as big. Did they call him the Cat in the Hat, or he's famous for wearing the hat? And
no question about it. One other thing about this incident, he not only dove underwater. I think he did it 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times.
And finally got him. Of course, he was tied up, I'm sure, in his seat belts and all that. And Rouse himself, I'm sure, knew that this was probably the end of his life. But this courageous act by this game warden and former Marine, you could have written a book about how he saved him, because once he got him out of the water, then he had to resuscitate him right there on the spot.
I think he even in the water.
That's right.
That's right. So it wasn't just getting him out of the water, and then he had to resuscitate him and get the water out of his lungs. And
this is not a funny thing to say but it is the truth. If our guy's not there, I don't think Rouse would be with us today. It was a very heroic act and by a very outstanding individual.
I think if I remember correctly, I need to find that story that the little bass boat he went in out to.
You just had a little trolling motor.
I think when he was coming back, even that boat started to sink because the little stopper.
That's right. Yeah, the stopper. You're exactly right. The stopper was out.
So it started filling up with water.
Boy, I tell you what.
Yeah, Roush is 77 years old.
Well, I would guess this is at least 20 years ago.
Did it say anything about
Roush is worth $300 million.
Yeah. I tell you what, and of course he was very generous to the family, and they were very
Here's
good
an article
friends.
that says he was pulled unconscious from the depths of an Alabama lake when a plane went down in 2002.
17 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it says 8 years later, his jet crash landed on an approach to a Wisconsin airport, with Rouse losing his eye in an accident. So this is twice this has happened to Rouse.
Yeah.
Can you believe he was in another plane crash and lost his eye?
Oh boy.
I missed that.
Would you ever fly if you had this kind of money? I'd just take a Winnebago everywhere I went.
Mike, it was a fun thing to do, I would think. Wouldn't you think it was something that challenged him,
there's all kind of famous aviation buffs that come to Troy and that fly all the time.
All right, there was a plane that crashed at the Troy Municipal Airport.
I thought there was an article that Howard Hughes lived out the rest of his life in Goshen and was a mechanic at the Troy Airport.
Yeah. Listen, do you remember the plane crash at the Troy Municipal Airport with the Dallas Cowboys coaches in it? You remember that?
Oh, they hit
really?
a deer.
When they were coming to look at DeMarcus Ware?
I don't know about that, but they were professional football coaches. I want to say with Dallas that came in here to look at some players, I would think, and they crashed.
I think they hit a deer on the runway or something.
They might have hit a deer. That's what I'm saying. They might have hit a deer on the runway.
I've never heard that story. Who was in that? Who was the coach at Dallas?
I don't know exactly, but let me tell you this: there's some guys that pulled those guys out too. That plane was on fire.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that too.
Other hits.
Maybe somebody call them and tell us.
Let me tell you this: you see something on fire like that, it takes a lot of courage to go in there because you don't know when it's going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
And.
Well, we talked about Mike Amos's own situation.
Do you remember that?
He flipped the car. Well, I can let you tell it. But anyway, there's one person came, saw Mike underwater, maybe getting ready to drown, somehow reached in and cut the safety belt that saved your life. And to this day, nobody knows who that man was.
Well, the first people that went down there, of course, he hydroplaned and went into a culvert. It was raining all day, and the culvert was full of water. and Mike's Jeep went upside down into the culvert. And Mike, you didn't know what was going on, but it was you were desperate to get out of there, but you were tied up really actually by the seat belts. Is that right?
Yeah, I was in a Eddie Bauer Explorer that flipped upside down, and then when I hit the water, I didn't know where I was, because it had been raining for like 3 or 4 days. So, I was in the water, and then I was upside down. I was trying to get out of my seatbelt, but of course I was reaching the wrong way, and then windshield shattered, and then I was, watching the water come into the car, and then I was underwater, drowning, and then somehow I got my head above water, and people were down there already trying to cut me out of the car.
Didn't have a knife. At the time, nobody had a knife.
I had the same situation with the guy the other day. His airbag, he was caught in his seatbelts, and on Saturday when I was in that wreck, and we couldn't get him out, and I had to flag a guy down and get a knife, and he came out, and we cut the guy out of his airbag and his seatbelt on Saturday, actually.
Well, so that could have been really bad.
It turned out the whole time I have that emergency hammer/knife thing for seatbelts in my car, and I guess I was kind of just out of it on Saturday and didn't realize it, and I had to flag somebody else down and get a knife.
Yeah. Well, of course, you were.
I will say this, like when you see a wreck, when I was young, I'd just ride by and, wouldn't think much of it, but of course I was in the wreck again on Saturday, but, it's good to try to help. I'll say this is how amazing, it works in the world. When that wreck happened Saturday, I couldn't get out of my car. It was jammed, but I was able to drive it off the road to get it out of the way. And the 2 other cars, were a lot worse than mine. And within a minute in that shopping center at Publix, a nurse came up running to help, and then a doctor pulled off the side of the road immediately. I'm talking about within 2 or 3 minutes, and ran saying, I'm a doctor, who needs help? So, there's a lot of good people in this world, there really is.
And I'm sure there are a lot of doctors that have places in that area down there, too, where you had that accident. Back to your, what is that now?
Scott, our crack producer, comes up with the info on the Dallas Cowboys wreck. We were kind of right. Dallas Cowboys football organization owner Jerry Jones was in a wreck in the Troy airport in January.
Jerry Jones was in there?
Yep. January 15, 2001. Amid cool and wet conditions, officials walked through the wreckage in a misty rain throughout the day, taking photographs of different parts of the aircraft that were scattered over an approximately 100-foot area, seeking clues about what caused the report.
This is at the Troy airport.
Reports indicate that 2 deer, which were apparently on the runway when the jet landed at the airport yesterday around 11 a.m., played a major role in the accident. Both animals were killed in the crash of the Lear Model 60. And this is from Troy Mayor Jimmy Lunsford, a quote. There's no doubt the initial reports that the deer caused this accident. When the small passenger jet crashed Sunday, both the pilot and the co-pilot, the only 2 occupants of the aircraft, were injured. So that tells you that maybe Jerry Jones... Jones owned the airplane, but he was not.
I don't think he was in it. I don't think he was in it.
Yeah. Okay. So the airplane was owned by Jerry Jones, but he was not. He was not in it.
But some Troy people, some people from the airport went down there and pulled those guys out. What I've heard.
I've got a note on Eddie Collins and Max McVickers must have been the pilot and co-pilot who were injured.
Right here in Troy.
Deer on the runway is dangerous.
Yes, sir. No question about it. And
we got the Mount Rushmore finally for our area. Do you want to hear the names of the greatest high school players?
Yes, sir. It'll be fun. Let me try to guess some of them now.
Come out of Montgomery, the Wiregrass, and Auburn. This is since 1968. Remember, so.
Oh boy!
Out of 1,200 nominees, the names have been trimmed to 25.
Out of Montgomery, you said?
Montgomery, Auburn, and the Wiregrass.
Okay.
Well, let's focus on Andre Bruce.
Andre Bruce, you're right, was the #1 draft that year.
Bart Starr was before then.
Richmond Flowers, was he in there?
Mike Washington was a great safety at Alabama.
You're right. Mike DeBose.
He didn't play in the. Are we basing this on high school?
This high school or
Yeah,
college?
basing this on the high school.
High school and college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mike DeBose.
No, basically just high school.
All right.
Oh, me. What's that little? I mean, did the Mobile count? With the Mobile area too, or just Montgomery?
This is the Wiregrass, Montgomery, and Auburn
All right.
areas.
The great defensive end that played at Northview, that played at Alabama, he would have to be on there, wouldn't
Yeah, Larry Roberts.
he? Larry Roberts. The great running back at Enterprise, who a lot of people thought was Allen Evans. Gosh.
Well, I mean, this is what they did in high school, but I'll go ahead and start the names.
Yeah.
The names are, I mean, they're leaving out some great players. I mean, I'm almost shocked.
Wishbone fullback out of Montgomery, Moore was a great one.
The star of the list is a guy named Alvin Freeman out of Elmore County.
Golly.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Alvin Freeman played in 1977. He already heard of that name.
I haven't either. All right, go ahead.
So this is out of 1,200 names. He was played at Elmore County.
Yeah, Willard Sism.
Hey, you gotta go. This is only from '68, so I don't know how in the world this guy got on this list. He had 19 touchdowns as a senior. He gained only 933 yards, but he's on this list somehow.
What's his name?
We just talked about Alvin Freeman. Now, this guy was the 1989 Mr. Football winner, was the first team All-State selection as a junior and senior. He also made Super 12 both years, was the 4A Player of the Year in 1989, played in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. He rushed for 6,000 yards on 768 carries.
Larry where?
He set a Alabama High School State Athletic Association record with 66 rushing TVs.
That's our guy out of Brundage, wasn't it?
Larry
Right. Stephen Coleman.
Stephen Coleman out of Brundage.
Yeah.
He scored 12 on punt returns, 6 on kickoffs,
Ooh.
3 on receptions, 2 on fumble returns. His senior year, he ran for 2,251 yards.
Stephen Coleman from Brundage.
Finished with 8,465 all-purpose yards.
Oh, man.
His nickname was Nuco.
Stephen
right.
Coleman, the number 2 rated player in the history.
Well, it's basically the poll is. This is the candidates. The poll is not.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Well, he's a good one. Nuco was awesome.
Well, if
Then after that, you got Larry Ware. I think that name's been mentioned.
well, you didn't mention Woodrow Lowe, did you, from Phoenix City?
I'm going down the list.
All right.
Was the state 1986 Mr. Football? What did Larry Ware do that was strange?
He went to Georgia.
He went to Georgia. That's right.
That's right, yeah.
I don't know if Alabama and Auburn even offered him the Mike, to tell you the truth.
And then this guy was a phenomenal player. Then played several years for the 49ers. Great player at Auburn. Fred Beasley, Leah Montgomery.
Yeah, great.
He was All-State selection 91, 92, 93.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
Then this guy's a star receiver at Alabama right now, Henry Ruggs III.
How about Terry Beasley of Robert E. Lee? Terry Beasley played at Auburn.
Well, let me do the list, but afterwards you will not believe all the names that have been left off of this top 25.
Okay, go ahead.
This guy was a great player at Clay County. I don't know how Clay County gets on this list. I guess they cut it to the areas of that. This guy's name was Stanford Simmons.
Never heard of him.
Stanford Simmons played at Auburn.
I never heard of him still.
This guy was from Carroll of Ozark, great running back.
Wilbur, put him on the mountain. Put him on the mountain.
I agreed, Mike.
On Mount Rushmore. Okay,
Yeah.
then
Wilbur
this guy was
Jackson.
a phenomenal player at Elba. The guy ended up playing in the NFL for 12 years.
Went right through Troy and we went to Florence State Teachers College, and his name was Ronald McKinnon.
Played on 3 national championship teams. Ronald McKinnon.
And Troy didn't even recruit him.
This guy was a great running back at Wadley, but wasn't great at Auburn. His name was Terrence Wilkes.
Yeah, I don't remember him.
This guy was from Wadley as well. Was a good receiver at Auburn. Terrell Zachary.
Yeah.
This guy played at Beauregard, and all he did his junior year was rush for 3,242 yards.
That was recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, LaDamian Webb.
He went to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. Did he stay with them or what?
Yeah, I don't know. And then this guy played right down the road in Dell County, went to Memphis, then transferred to Troy, and I don't even know if he's even playing football anymore.
No, he's not.
Jamarius Henderson rushed for 9,700 yards in his high high school career. He has a state record all-time 3,483 yards, 48 touchdowns his senior year.
Can you believe that? And is not playing football today. Instead of going to Troy right out of college, he went to Memphis. Go ahead.
Yeah, but he went to Memphis because they had Justin Fuentes, who was a great coach at the time.
Yeah.
And Fuentes left and went to Virginia Tech. This guy was a great player at Florida State under Bobby Bowden from Dothan, Lawrence Dulcie.
Yeah.
Remember him?
This guy was a great player at Alabama, was an All-American, played for Stallings. Out of Northview High School, Kevin Jackson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was an unbelievable player out of Auburn High School, but signed with Alabama, had a great career at Alabama, Rashad Evans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was from Abbeville, Alabama.
Leroy Cook.
That's right. He was an all-state selection in 1969 to 71.
He was running off the field, giving a high five to our guy that owns the restaurants, Mike, and he tore his knee up and never played again.
Jimmy Rain?
No, not Jimmy Rain, but he owns a restaurant in downtown. I mean, in Tuscaloosa, that's pretty famous.
Oh, Baumhauer.
Baumhauer, yeah.
That's right. That's good.
This guy was a great player at Central Coosa. Ended up going to play for Southern Miss.
Oh, yeah, that linebacker.
Dalius Thomas.
Yeah, I remember him. He played in the pros, didn't he?
This guy was coached by Frank Sadler.
Oh,
Woodrow Lowe?
Woodrow Lowe.
He needs to be on there.
Played at the University of Alabama, played 10 years with San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, you might want to put him on the wall. You're right.
This guy was supposed to win the Heisman Trophy at Auburn. He played at Carver or Montgomery.
Oh, yeah, that was...
He was a flop at Auburn.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
wouldn't say he was a flop, complete flop. He had some good games. Johnson, or what's his name?
Yeah, Jeremy Johnson.
He had some good games.
Yeah, he went in the wrong place. That's what he did.
This guy was a really good tight end at Auburn. Played Trinity of Montgomery.
Oh, one of the Trots? No.
Tommy Trott.
Tommy Trott, yeah.
And then this guy played at Prattville High School. Went to Auburn as a walk-on. Came to Troy and played a lot. Great high school player, Justin Albert.
Yeah, that's right.
And then this kid was from Eufaula, one of the all-time greats of all time.
Jarrell Jernigan.
Terrell Jernigan had 5,985 all-purpose yards in high school.
Couldn't tackle him in an open field. The guy was unbelievable.
Had a pretty good NFL career.
Pretty amazing. Did you know Jernigan, his senior year at Eufaula, rushed for 2,390 yards?
Of course, he was a quarterback. They played him at quarterback. He wasn't even a running back, you know.
On 270 carries and scored 37 touchdowns. He also threw for 1,600 yards and 13 touchdowns. That's unbelievable.
Why didn't Alabama's and Auburn's recruit him?
You're right. They were.
Oh, there's a story that they did recruit him. James Willis, when he had that huge game against Georgia his freshman year, where he caught, I think, 170 yards and passes and 2 touchdowns. He took that to the coach's office that day and laid the paper out in front of the head coach.
Oh yeah. Yeah, talking about Jernigan, yeah.
Yeah, this guy played at Maplesville. He blocked for Bo.
Oh,
Tommy
he was a great
Agee.
one. Tommy Agee.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. He put up big numbers in high school at Maplesville.
Yeah.
He was a legend.
This guy played at Andalusia, played linebacker on a couple of national championship teams at Alabama.
Yeah.
Nico Johnson.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
Good.
Now, this guy was a great offensive lineman at Auburn, played for several years.
No question about it. Ed King.
Ed King, that's right.
Out of Central Phoenix City. And back then, Mike, everybody at Phoenix City was going to Alabama. He turned the thing around, and Auburn started getting these guys from Phoenix City.
James Joseph.
Do you remember that?
Didn't Takeo Spikes go to Phoenix City?
Jackson went to Alabama.
Takeo Spikes must be on there.
Yeah, okay.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. The Keo Spikes is from Auburn. I mean, not from Auburn, but from Georgia. But, I mean, that's the top 25. Now, where's DeMarcus Ware out of Auburn? Where's O.C. Manure out of Auburn?
Yeah, I know it. You're right.
I mean, I guess maybe they weren't great high school players.
Well, let me tell you this. When they signed O.C. Manure, Larry told me, he said, I think we got a sleeper. And he was just 16 years old when he signed with Troy. Did you know that, Mike?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Now, where's Fred Baxter? Where's Cornelius Griffin? Where's Quincy Jackson? Where's Chris Nixon?
Exactly.
Yeah, good points, Mike.
I mean, think of all the other Montgomery players. Where's George T?
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah. You're picking them out, buddy. They left off a ton of them.
I mean, I mean, the Fortin kid that played out of Jeff Davis at South Alabama, Gorman Fortin. I mean, there's just tons of players.
Mike Washington was an All-American at Alabama that played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 10 years.
How about Terry Beasley out of Robert E. Lee High School played at Auburn?
If this goes back to '68, you could have Stephen Shealy. You could have all kinds of people on this list.
Yeah. A poor job of putting the candidates up there. You're right.
This is out of 1,200 candidates. This is the final 25.
But it was fun to go over that, though, and a lot of fun.
Who would your Mount Rushmore be of that group? Stephen Coleman might be on there.
Stephen Coleman was great. I tell you what, Pike County has produced some great players. There's no question.
I look at what they did after their high school and just their stature.
Well, Woodrow Lowe, I would have to
Woodrow
think.
Lowe, Wilbur Jackson.
Fred Beasley was a great player.
Yeah, that's right. What a great player.
Ed King had a great career, I think.
Yeah, he did. Sure did. But, it'd be fun to go back over that. But, it was fun that you brought it up. And, of course, want to mention our good friends at Premier Dodge Chrysler Jeep today. They're dealing, believe you me, and they'll beat anybody's price anywhere at Premier Dodge Chrysler Jeep on the bypass. Also, First Cahaba Bank, ladies and gentlemen, located on the corner of Publix and Johnny Withington Drive right here in Troy. A beautiful new bank, and let me say that they want you to come and sit down and do business with First Cahaba Bank of Troy, Alabama, and with their home offices in Selma. Want to mention also our good friends at Lawrence Hardware right across the street. Appreciate J.B. Roberts and the gang over there. And, of course, also Max Federal Credit Union are located on the bypass right here in Troy. And let me just say this, they are an outstanding group of people doing a super job right now in Troy, Alabama at Max Federal Credit Union. We hope that you've enjoyed our show today.
Can I put in a plug for my church?
Yeah, you sure can, my friend.
On this Sunday, we're going to begin celebrating something called the August Awakening. And we're having at First Methodist Church, we're not going to have but one service, and it's not going to be the morning service at 8:30 or the later service at 11. It's going to be at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's a professor of the seminary in Kentucky that's real good friends with the pastor, Steve Winton. He's going to speak, and we're going to have special music by Tim Sims. And then we're going to have 4 nights in a row, he's going to speak at 6 o'clock at the church. So that begins the 11th and goes through the 14th. It's called the August Awakening, and the entire public, not just Methodists, are invited to come join us.
And ladies and gentlemen, remember tomorrow, 7 o'clock, the head football coach at Troy University, Chip Lindsey, will be our guest. So the head football coach at Troy will be right here in the morning starting at 6 o'clock. And we hope that you'll 7 o'clock. Hope that you'll be there. So be there at 6 too if you want to, whatever.